Yo, 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 welcome back to another episode of That's Dope. My name is Godswill Ugwa, and we got a special guest. We got Comic Drake with us. This is your second time, really, but your first time with me, so I'm going to treat it like the first time.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. And, first of all, we've been good friends for, a long time, which I'm really grateful for. Yeah. Lots of good times together. I mean, in fact, even right before Corona happened, you came to LA. We got to hang out.
Yep.
And that was a great time. You showed me a new spot that I didn't even know about here. I don't know many spots out in LA. But
that is the prime date destination.
Seriously.
Build your own sodas, absolutely.
Yeah, I was like, dang, what do I do with this knowledge? But, now that it's Corona, I can't go date and whatever, right? But, thank you. I'm always glad that, you've always been a homie. You let me borrow some video games, which I'm still trying to get through. And then now I wanted to bring you on because you are the comic book paragon, really, the one that, people turn to. Yes. Oh, please. You were the one, the chosen one. And right now I was like, this is the perfect time. Comic books are on the rise again. We just had comic book adaptations coming out the wazoo that are just great. We had WandaVision, which based off of different things, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then now just Invincible. And I was like, hey, who knows comic books better than Comic Drake?
Well, who knows Invincible better than Comic Drake?
Right.
Invincible is heavily associated with my brand because it has been not only my favorite comic book, it has been my favorite fictional work for many, many years. I love it so much. I was showing you before the show, but I got issue number 1 right here, which is probably the most valuable comic I own, especially now since I bought this at $200 and it just sold recently on eBay, another copy for $1,400. So I'm debating if I want to hold on to this or not, but. Especially after how good I know season 2 and 3 are going to be, this is only going to shoot up in value.
Oh yeah,
and actually, fun fact: probably the most valuable indie comic out there is Walking Dead #1, which is also written by Robert Kirkman, the guy that made Invincible.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Actually, do you have that one or not?
I don't. I got into Walking Dead a little bit later, but Robert Kirkman is my favorite writer, and everything he touches, at least that I've read, has just been solid gold.
Man, like Invincible. So I guess for people who haven't caught up, I'm still seeing people haven't watched it. They're sharing the memes that they haven't watched it. Don't do that. Go watch the show, right? Or at least read the comic for sure. Not at least read the comic, right?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, Invincible is the new animated take on superheroes, but it just goes bonkers immediately. Is what if Superman were to go dark, really,
Yeah, the way I describe it is that it's Spiderman meets the boys.
Yes. Oh, perfectly said, man. And I guess what is it about Invincible that do you think that captured everybody, the show, and then also what's to come?
Well, the big thing is that what makes Invincible special, first of all, what makes Invincible truly special, I can't really talk about because that's not going to be until season 2, 3, 4. Because
wow.
Everybody gets their mind blown when I say this, but season 1 is probably the most boring it will ever be. I mean, I love it; it's good stuff, but that is small potatoes compared to what's to come. But I think what really sells it, especially the animated series, is the character of Mark Grayson, Invincible himself. He's really the everyman. He's a good guy with a good heart. But he's also a complete dumbass all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, the memes are going around what? For somebody who calls himself Invincible, you get your ass beat constantly.
Constantly. I was
constantly.
I get that he's brand new to it, but it's just sort of did you have no awareness how things are going to get? Especially in a world where there's plenty of supers, there's plenty of bad things are always happening, and oh hey, your dad's a hero already, and
the greatest hero.
Man, he had no awareness, I guess, of just how it was.
Not
then again, whatever. He's a kid.
Now, well, the cool thing about Invincible is that it really looks at what a world with superheroes would actually look like. It shows the consequences. When you go off into space, you don't just breathe. You don't always have access to helmets. No, Viltrumites, which Mark is half-blooded of, they just hold their breath for an absurdly long time.
Oh, wow.
And they have to dip back down into the atmosphere during big fights because maybe they're running out of air. So they need to quickly go back down, take another puff, come back up.
I didn't know that, actually. I was wondering, what was going on.
Well, and they communicate through telepathy. Because Alan the alien, he comes in, they can't even talk because there's no sound in space. So the only
I was wondering if the alien was communicating to him with telepathy.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, later on they get little earbuds that use the same kind of it emulates Alan's biological abilities of telepathic communication,
That's pretty cool.
but a way to write around it. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, like they show the blood, they show the destruction and the collateral damage that's usually overlooked in other media, and so it takes this grounded, gritty look and combines it with, would you really want to be a superhero? The answer is yes, absolutely. But it's not all like glamorous. You are going to get your ass whooped over and over and over again.
That's the facts. Like it's like I don't blame Mark for getting his ass whooped. It's just sort of like, all right, bro, when are you gonna go hit the gym? Versus just constantly like, oh, I just want to go back to high school. It's like, bro, no more high school for you. You can, I don't know, just go lift some rocks and go figure out how to get better, because this is constant every episode.
Yeah, that's one thing I really like about The Incredibles for the Pixar movie is whenever Mr. Incredible needed to get back into shape, like they actually showed the training montage of him bench pressing trains, really having to actually work up to it.
And lose weight,
Yeah, they do kind of play with that a little bit in later issues of Invincible, because he gets stronger and stronger. Like if you're a Dragon Ball Z fan, the power scaling with it, like everybody's all talking about, oh man, can Omni-Man beat Goku? How's that going to go? Dude, you're seeing Mark and Omni-Man at their weakest in the series. Like,
whoa,
when this stuff gets big, we're talking like, it's hard not to spoil it, because I just want to talk about all the good stuff that I can't talk about.
I mean, like I low key want to hear about it, but at the same time, I really want to experience it. So I guess could you tell?
Experience it?
Yeah, I'm so excited. So could you tell us about like the comic? Like when did it start? When did it finish? Like I guess just the basics about it, right?
Yeah, so it was written by Robert Kirkman, who is my favorite writer of all time. He did Walking Dead. He's done a bunch of other indie books too, and it's actually interesting. A lot of his other titles actually do feed into Invincible. So there's actually a series he did about a year beforehand called Tech Jacket, and it's kind of like a Green Lantern-ish thing. There's an alien race, guy crash lands on Earth, gives his mech suit to this kid, and then he goes off and fights space wars and stuff. And Tech Jacket actually becomes a pretty big character in Invincible. Same for some of the other stuff, like the Astounding Wolfman. It was another one where that character it ends up playing a part in Invincible. There's some spin-off series that he does called like Guarding the Globe, which focuses on the Guardians of the Globe, which is the Justice League stand-in in Invincible. They get a couple of spin-off series. There's a spin-off series with the characters Adam, Eve, and Rexplode. So the book itself started in 2003. This was when Image Comics was really doing their first push into superhero books. So originally Image was a bunch of the most famous artists and writers of the 90s realized that Marvel and DC were selling so many books off of their star power that they were like, either pay us more money or we're going to go start our own studio. And so they did. And it was a bunch of like really young, hip, talented creators all jumping on, doing their thing. And they have a deal, unlike Marvel and DC, where the creators own their properties at Image. Image takes like a little bit off the top, keeps it going, but ultimately the writers and artists can take that stuff, their properties elsewhere. They can ship it off to get stuff like Invincible made. Invincible is also a special case because Robert Kirkman is a partner at Image Comics now, and he actually has his own sub company within it called Skybound, which is responsible for Invincible. Wow. So it's all kind of tied in together, but. It started whenever Image was wanting to do their first push into making superhero books for the first time, because before they did a lot more grounded stuff. The most superhero thing they had was Spawn. That was like their number one character for a long time. And there was like a bit of they were trying to play around with the Image superheroes being in the same universe. So there's cameos from other Image heroes all the time in here. Characters like Savage Dragon, Brit, other those, but none have popped off like Invincible. This really is the one that stood the test of time. Corey Walker was originally the artist on it, and I like the guy just fine. I think he does fine art. When you look at the book, it is very 2003 in a lot of ways. There's some jokes that probably shouldn't be said these days.
That's rough,
especially given the character of William. He is.
Yeah, I was thinking. I was just like, ooh, I can think of a few people maybe that.
Yeah. But I like. Corey Walker's
We're better people now, right?
I like Corey Walker's art just fine, but then when one of my favorite artists comes on, Ryan Ottley, he sticks with the series for the majority of it afterwards. And a lot of the most iconic scenes are drawn by him, and it's just been Robert and Rotley just going in for the next 100 issues, basically. So the series ran for 144. I'm gonna try not to show the cover of the final issue because it has some spoilers.
Oh
But
man.
yeah, I want to say this ended in 2017, 2018 with the final storyline, The End of All Things.
Wow.
Yeah,
The end
part
of all things.
part 12 of 12. Like
Whew.
they built up this ending, and it's so emotional, it's so wholesome. I cried. People think that whenever I explain that Invincible's wholesome, they go, no, the bloody show where the guy is held through a subway train and is used as a weapon to kill hundreds of people, no, it's wholesome. It's got a heart.
Yeah, I was just like, when you said wholesome, I was just like, what?
No,
Wait. Hold up, what?
there is so much heart in Invincible. It's great. And one thing that I do love about the sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just about to say, I agree. Like, I do, like, even through, like, the gore, the violence, and all that, like, I do feel the heart. I do
Yeah.
feel, like, the sort of care for the characters, and, like, even at the very end, like, when things look super bleak, everyone is like, hey, let's get together and, group hug, as best as we
Yeah.
can.
It's that emotional core that I think really sets the series apart from so many other things. That it has the blood and the gore and the great action, the great set pieces, the great art, the deep philosophical questions, but it also has that heart at its center too. One thing that I really like about Invincible, and a lot of what Robert Kirkman does in general, is that he is the master of the page turn reveal, and that's something that I really think that comics do that you don't really get in other mediums. That makes it special. Is that whenever you're reading a comic, you, the reader, are engaging with it at your own time. If you want to soak up every bit of the art, you can analyze every panel as long as you can, as long as you want to. Like if you're watching a show or movie, you have to like pause to look at a frame and like get it at just the right time. You can read the words over and over again. One thing that's really interesting is the way that the words are inflected are up to your interpretation. So I don't know if we are spoiling any bits from Invincible the show.
Should be good.
Okay, because there's this line in the finale where Omni-Man is talking to Mark. Are you sure I can spoil this?
We gave a warning. If you haven't seen Invincible finale by now, just probably skip over the next minute. I'll let you know when we get back.
For just like 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this line where Omni-Man says that he treated his wife as a pet and that he loved her that way. When I read the comic, I read that very cold and harsh, where he was just trying to break down Mark and like, no, your mother was just a pet to me. But in the show, the delivery was very. I never would have even thought about it. He said it with such sincerity, like, no, I loved her, but in like the way you would love a pet. And that and the voice acting was so solid because it
J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons killed it.
My God.
He fundamentally believes everything he's saying, and that's a different thing entirely. And I think the show and the comic work so well. I think they're both equally good so far in different ways. The comic has a way to flesh out side stories and characters in a way that you don't get in the show, because the show has to really get up there. But stuff like the voice acting, the character of Machine Head with his little auto-tune bit, just elevates the character to a whole nother level. But one great thing that I think makes Invincible great for a syndicated serialized show is that Kirkman is the master of the page turn reveal. So when you actually turn the page, you are giving a whole new bit of information that the reader is doing at their own pace. And like every issue of Invincible has some sort of plot twist or revelation or big bombshell dropped, and every one of them works, in my opinion.
Wow.
And like those end of issue stingers, those cliffhangers, he's really good at doing those. And that's Invincible deconstructs the superhero genre in such a great way that everything that you see in superheroes, magic, technology, aliens, all these tropes, death and resurrection, they're played with in really interesting ways. And I think it's really interesting that we can have Invincible right now as an animated series, because we're at the point where the broader pop culture is dominated by superhero storytelling. And now the general audience is familiar with a lot of these tropes in a way that they weren't before. Mm-hmm. And so that I don't think Invincible would be as appreciated if you don't understand superheroes like at a base level.
Mm-hmm. Like MCU, like in like I guess DC, like just people being able to see like comic books as a whole and sort of get that sort of vibe, right?
Yeah, you can't appreciate a deconstruction when you don't know what they're deconstructing.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it really is like a great deconstruction. It definitely. I've been telling anime fans it feels like One Punch Man. Like exactly for that reason, because it is a deconstruction. One Punch Man is a deconstruction of anime tropes, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
yeah.
boom, synapses are being formed right here. I never even really thought about that at all. So
Well,
you're the perfect
that's
guy.
my job.
Exactly. It's like
Thank
I'm
you.
so happy I'm talking to you about this. Like, and also you are selling me on the comic, although at the same time, like I'm a little hesitant. I am hesitant on the comic because I'm like, oh, do I want to know like what's gonna happen? It's sort of like,
Now, see,
please tell me, please. Like
no,
I'm wondering.
I will. No, I'm going to make your life so much better. So the
Please.
thing for me with Invincible is that all those big revelations and plot twists are great stuff,
Uh-huh.
and so you get the experience when you read the comic of going, you don't know where it's going and you're blown away, and then when you're watching the show, you see it coming, and then you don't know how they're going to make it different, and so you kind of get to experience that revelation again.
Mm,
In my opinion, I
okay.
think it's good, and like that line that I mentioned earlier, that people that didn't see it, if they skipped that, I got a newfound appreciation for it by seeing a different interpretation of the source material. So I think it's
Okay.
great the second time around. Also,
Okay.
it's great to show people and experience with them when they go whoa, and I go yeah,
Yeah.
and also just
Yeah.
the hype. I really do think that you can't truly appreciate something until it's done, which is a problem that I have with a lot of long running superhero comics, a lot of long running anime, that they don't really get a chance to actually conclude in a good way. And
Mm-hmm.
when you get to go back and engage with something you loved again, and you see the little bits of foreshadowing and the little Easter eggs, comics are as a whole are a medium that I fell in love with because the more you read, the better they all get. Like
Mm.
for big continuities like Marvel, like you don't need to read everything to understand what's going on in the core book, because if any writer worth their salt will tell you what you need to know about the story that you're reading.
Okay.
But then there's those little references and stuff that you might be like, oh, is that referencing something I don't know about? I can go back and read books over and over again because I've since learned so much more, or I've learned more about the history of the writer or whatever. And
Ah.
like especially seeing how the writer inserts a lot of themselves. Like with Invincible, Robert Kirkman has his own little stand-in guy because Mark is a huge comic book fan, and he has dialogue with the Robert Kirkman stand-in about like
Oh.
how he repeats panels to save on time.
I
Or
saw I
yeah,
saw an image of that like on the internet and it, like cracked me up. I was like, who's this guy? But I think that's pretty
yeah.
funny. Okay.
Yeah, and another good thing about the comic is that those references from other Image comics that I mentioned earlier, they
Hmm.
can't do that in the show. So Mark's favorite comic is called Science Dog, and they can't do that in Invincible. It's Seance Dog, because
Ah.
Robert Kirkman did a couple issues of Science Dog as a comic book, and now that's its own licensed trademark they can't do
Okay.
in the show because it's a separate
Licensing.
thing. Just like how there's a bad guy that we'll be seeing in season 2 where his power is portals. So he'll open up a portal, and then Mark will fly in there, and then that universe will beat Mark up, and then he has to find his way back. And in one issue, he goes to the Marvel universe, like straight up, and he has to team up with Spider-Man himself,
Oh, because I've been
which is
seeing
cool.
images of him like with
Yeah,
Spider-Man, and I was like, how did this happen? Or like what's going on here?
yeah. And
Wow.
there's one bit where he always goes to a portal, and he goes to the Walking Dead universe, and
Hey.
and you can't do that in the show because of other legal properties. But it's easier whenever everything's in house. So
Mhm.
there's so much to be enjoyed from both.
Man, okay, that's okay. You're selling me on that because,
Yeah.
like, there have been some times like I read some manga and then like when I try to watch anime, it's just not. It doesn't hit as hard, like, or it
Mhm.
doesn't hit as well. But you have sold me on this, and like I'm also like I don't want to get spoiled for like future things, but like I'm so excited to see like
There
what
you
these future
go.
things are. So,
You can't
ooh,
get spoiled if you read the comic first.
exactly right. Now I can be the bad guy. No, I won't be a bad guy. I'll be good.
Yeah.
I'm very hyped. You got me sold on this, and I'm gonna check out the series now because, like this is so
That's
dope,
what I love to hear.
man. So I guess also like to I guess like let me go to the back. Like, because you did like hint on this a little bit, like what got you into comics, and then like what has kept you into comics, because comics seem
I
like such a hard medium to like really get into in a way, with so much to get into, and then but then now it seems like it's sort of like finding a resurgence, especially like with all these movies, TV shows, cartoons, all that.
Yeah, so I have the weirdest origin story for comics. I'm the only guy that read comics to get a girl.
Wow.
You never hear about that,
Yeah,
but
right.
I've always been fascinated with superheroes. I loved watching the DC animated universe, Batman the animated series, Batman Beyond. I
Hmm.
love the DC stuff so much, and I tried to get into comics. I had these I actually still have a few back here, but they're these. eyewitness DK books that'd be like encyclopedia for the X-Men or encyclopedia for Spider-Man, and I read through those. I thought they were so cool, and I was going to a comic shop because they sold Pokemon cards, and this is in the middle of the 90s, you know, the heyday. I'm trying to get the new Jungle set. I begged my mom, and while we're there, they had a bunch of back issues of comics, and I was looking through, and I wanted to see my favorite superhero, Cable, because I read him in the encyclopedia book. He seemed so cool, and he had the big metal arm. And I picked up this issue, and it's Cable fighting his evil clone that I read about in that book. So great. And what I didn't realize, that was the middle of a story in the middle of the 90s, one of the most complicated eras of comic books. And I read it, and I had no idea what was happening. And I was so put off. The continuity was so outsider unfriendly that I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm never reading a comic again.
Wow.
And so what I would do is I would read a bunch of wiki pages, because the idea in these stories fascinated me, but I didn't know how to engage them. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to do. And there was nobody there to really help me. None of my friends liked comics. They were all weebs. It was manga, which was great. But I had nobody to really hold my hand into that. And it's funny because I read so many of those wikis that I could go toe to toe with comic fans on trivia and stuff just because I read so much. But then I started dating this girl, and I was I woke up at her place one day, and I noticed her bookshelf had a bunch of Batman comics. I was like, yo, comic books. Hey. Okay, if I want to get good with this girl, I should probably read some of these comic books.
Wow. The power of women once again for good.
Yeah. But so she gave me some good starting places, and I read this book from the 2011 DC reboot. They rebooted their universe for the second time, and they were starting off with new number ones. And little did I know that Batman was one of the few things that kept continuity from before. But because I played the Arkham games, I watched the shows, I was familiar enough with all of the Batman characters that it was super cool. And they introduced this new set of bad guys, the Court of Owls. And I read the first trade. That's if we're going into like the specifics of things. So I have a trade of Invincible right here. This is actually my favorite arc, the Viltrumite War. You have single issues, and then when you get about 5 or 6 of those, you get a trade paperback. And these are if it's a self-contained story, then that's a graphic novel.
Okay. So
graphic novel, you don't need, like, this is volume 14. So yeah. So I read the first trade of Batman Court of Owls, and it blew my mind. Sorry, I went away from the mic. It blew my mind. And from then, I fell in love with this medium, and I just consumed so much. I lived next to this big half-price books that had an insane selection, and I was buying trades left and right. I was reading probably about 3 a day.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was going on YouTube, watching whatever videos I could find, because like it was a whole new world. And the more I learned about comics, the better they got, because I kept falling more and more in love with it. I learned more about Spider-Man, which then introduced me to other characters, and I understood their backstories more. I started learning about the writers and behind the scenes, and how so much of comic history becomes canonized within the events of the books themselves. Like the entire reason DC rebooted the first time was because they kept buying competitors, and they needed a way to make those characters they bought
bring those in,
fit into the universe. Okay. So they rebooted it, and then they're like, oh, they've always been here. Blue Beetle's always been a character in DC. No, we didn't just buy him. It's a new Blue Beetle.
Okay.
Yeah, and also it's interesting because comics are the only American art form. Comic books originated in America, and yeah, and it's fascinating because they're such a part of our history too. They were a huge deal during World War II. Like Captain America #1 was released before the United States went to war. It went before Pearl Harbor.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And issue #1 was there with Steve Rogers punching Hitler, the leader of a global superpower that the United States refused to go to war with. And that comic, honestly, was a push forward towards America joining the war. It was a propaganda comic that was meant that did help, especially because most original comic creators were Jewish. People like Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Joe Simon, all these old school creators are almost all Jewish descent. So that was a big part of that's why so many comics were so heavily involved with World War II in their plots.
Wow. I had no clue about that, because I had heard Superman creators, I think, right? But otherwise, I had no clue about like the rest and beforehand. I didn't know that came out before. That's cool. So
Stanley is actually a pen name. For his name is Stanley Martin Lieber, and he was he's a Jewish dude who he wanted to save his real name for when he wrote serious work, but then he ended up sticking around in Marvel under the pen name.
Hey, I'm glad you stuck around for sure. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, and also that's a really cool origin story for you too, because I mean, as I mean, I had always watched the TV shows myself. I had always like been around it myself. Watched the '90s cartoons. I didn't read a compendium like you might have, but I had seen those characters. Especially like with the video games. Marvel vs. Capcom, or just been around it. And my friend, like in high school, like even gave me some comics, and I remember reading Civil War. But
that's a bad starting comic.
Yeah, like I found like this whole package of just like all the comics like that are in between, but then I just sort of fell off. But I've always adored comics, for what they are. But now I'm too deep into like anime world and manga world.
You can like both. That's the cool thing.
True, don't get me wrong. And I guess now maybe I really want to. I think I will. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, you do.
Dang it, but I'm just like, I'm so behind in like anime world too.
No, okay. No, you don't understand. My pile, like I'm about 300 issues of current comics that I'm not caught up on. But I read everything for work.
Yeah. That's dope, though.
The biggest thing that people need to understand is that everybody thinks that, I need to know everything about these universes. And a lot of people, they want to. The number one rule is that you're never going to know everything. And once you get over yourself there, then the world is your oyster, because everybody feels like I'm going to be left out. So here's what I always say is that first, you can start anywhere you want. And that if the writer wants you to know something, they'll tell you. Because also, say you've been reading comics for 30 years and they're referencing something that happened 30 years ago. You might not remember that. So they'll give you like a little flashback reminder or a little text box that says, hey, this happened in Spider-Man number whatever. And it doesn't really matter if you know or not. As long as the writer tells you, you're good. Okay. It's like when you're watching a movie, you don't need to know. Like John Wick is a great example. Like, we don't need to know all of his backstory. We just know that he was a badass mercenary guy. We don't need to know the specifics of how we got started. We didn't learn who taught him how to shoot a gun. All that matters is what's right here and right now. And if we need to know it, somebody will tell us. So you find a good starting point of, like, you find a character or a genre that you like. Go online. Lots of nerds like me will have, like, here's some good starting points. Read some of those. If you feel like this is something that's a reference that you want to know more about, go online. There's Wikipedias maintained by nerds like me, and we'll tell you. It'll explain every minute detail. You'll get into a Wikipedia rabbit hole for a bit, but whatever. But just get over yourself. And I'm not saying you; it's everybody. Get over yourself. Actually try it out. And because people kept giving me comics my entire life, and I'm like, yeah, I'll read that eventually, whatever.
Yeah.
but if you start on like a deconstruction, like Civil War, that's so deep seated in like Marvel history.
The whole universe.
Somebody else tried to give me this book, Kingdom Come, as one of my first comics, and that is not a good starter comic.
Is that like Superman?
It's the next generation of superheroes.
Okay.
And it's an alternate universe story where like the young heroes, it's actually a lot like Civil War.
Okay.
There's a bunch of young heroes, and then there's like a big explosion that happens because the heroes are being irresponsible, and then the old guard needs to come back in and kind of put them into shape. And then also like there's like a fight between the villains and the heroes. It's a lot going on. It's a great book, but it's also a deeper exploration of a lot of these characters.
Gotcha.
That was kind of when we first started seeing Wonder Woman characterized as a warrior, first and foremost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
That one's real deep to start with.
Okay. I mean, this is great though. Like I'm glad that I'm talking to you because I think it's like that fear of like where to start. It's like, do I start at volume 1 of Spider-Man from the 60s?
If you want to. If you want to. Those are also good.
Yeah. Okay. And like also it's like the new stuff that's happening. It's like I don't know at all what's new or like what's happening.
Spider-Man is nuts right now.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, I haven't even thought about like the last time I heard something was going on with Spider-Man, like Doc Ock took over his brain.
That's where I started.
Okay, wow, that's where you started. Okay,
I started in a really weird spot, and I loved Superior Spider-Man. And then I went back and like, okay, how did we get here? And that was also good.
Okay,
God, I love Superior Spider-Man.
Wow, yeah, and then also I've heard about the different Spider-Mans like throughout, like
Spider, Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I'm just sort of like, okay, hold up, like what's going on? They all look really cool. I don't know like which one is which or what's going on, but
everybody's got a spider that speaks to them.
Whew. Oh man, okay, okay.
Like straight up, like Miles Morales is my guy. I love him so much. His current book is so good. They took a lot of inspiration from Spider-Verse. They've actually let
Ooh,
his Latino side shine a bit more.
okay, that's
Yeah,
legit.
and bit of a controversial opinion. I also like the original Miles Morales comics. People were saying that he was just a race swapped Peter Parker, that they were basically written the same way.
Uh-huh.
Kind of. Brian Michael Bendis, the guy that created him, he kind of only writes one type of character. Which the MCU does a lot of. Everybody is various degrees of sarcastic and charming. They have no, like, what's really the difference between like Peter Quill and Tony Stark in terms of personality in the MCU?
One
They're
smarter, I guess, right?
Yeah, they're both like charming, smug
Yeah,
assholes.
smarmy. Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, and that's how Bendis writes every character for the
That's
most part.
funny.
So yeah, he kind of wrote Peter the same way as he did Miles, but then he started to flesh out, and that's the other thing. People don't stick with new characters long enough to let them really develop into their own thing.
Mm.
People are they're so quick to hate on things. Me,
Mhm.
I hate disliking things, so I give everything a good chance. I try to not go in with confirmation bias. And then since then, it's been amazing watching Miles' supporting cast grow, watching the character grow, and I love everything going on with him right now. And yeah, I think everybody has a spider that speaks to them. Some people like Spider-Gwen, now called Ghost Spider, terrible name.
Oh.
Some people like Scarlet Spider. Some people like Spider-Punk. And there's a million books always coming out. Some people like the Japanese Tokusatsu Spider-Man from the 70s.
Oh yeah, I've seen that live action. It's just sort
He's
of like,
great.
like what is happening here?
Love that show.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, like, because I started Spider-Man the video game, thanks to you, right? But
Yeah, and
in fact,
that's
I need
another
a
one. You don't need to know his history.
yeah.
You go right in the action.
It was dope. Like, although I need to restart it, because I don't know, just weirdness. But then I see all these
Yeah.
these costumes for it. I'm just like,
Mhm.
yo, what are all these? They look super cool.
What is Spider-Man 2099?
I was just like, whoa, I am very interested. I'm just like, where do I start? And like,
Yeah, man.
what do I do? I mean, I remember even like reading like Ultimate Spider-Man
Yeah.
and
That's a
I
great starting place.
okay, cool. And then like I had
That's
even
where
watched.
Miles comes from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because that Peter dies and then Miles takes over.
Ah, okay. So maybe that'll stick with that. What
It's
else?
really, really good. I just read it for like cover to cover for the first time recently. I've like read like bits and pieces, but that book is real solid, start to finish.
Okay. Maybe that's what I'll jump into. Like,
Yeah,
there's
man.
so many different types of comic book starting points. I'm just like, which one do I guess like for me is like I'm very indecisive also, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe it's just sort of like I need
Just
to
read
be.
them all.
Oh yeah, there we go. Just do that.
Once
Yeah.
you pop, you just can't stop. Like
Oh
you're
my
gonna
gosh.
be in real deep.
If I didn't have to read for my job too, like I have to read more manga, right? Then
Yeah.
maybe I would jump into that more. And but I will seriously though, like jump into.
You will. No,
Yeah.
seriously.
I mean,
After
after
this podcast, let me hook
yeah,
you
it's
up.
like I'm talking to you now. It's like okay, that was one thing I was a little worried about. Like okay, if I talk to Drake, I'm gonna have to start comic books for real, and that's gonna be a whole
Because
another
I'm a good
medium.
hype man.
I know. It's like dang it, now I really gotta to dive into all this. And then for sure, definitely you sold me on Invincibles. Maybe that'll be like the first real starting point.
Oh yeah, that's.
Mm.
I think it's a good starting point.
Whew.
Man, one thing I will say about like comic book fans get a really bad reputation because like of characters like the comic book guy from Simpsons and like
Yeah.
worst issue ever, or whatever. Honestly, the people that are the most toxic generally don't read comics. A lot of comic book spaces have kind of been taken over by very, very vocal minorities of people that don't actually read the books. They're just there to be reactionaries to grift, either to sell their own independent books through things like Kickstarter, or they're just there to argue about a culture war that doesn't really exist. And that's where we have things like the Comicscape movement, which I don't want to get like too much on that. But in my experience, comic book fans, there's so few of us that we're just excited for anybody to join us.
Join us, right?
Yeah, no, like if you take a look at X Twitter, which is like the X-Men fandom on Twitter,
Wow.
so you can either look at hashtag X Twitter or X spoilers for whenever they're discussing new issues. It's a very welcoming, wholesome community, like especially the X-Men, because they're such a parallel for any oppressed minority. A lot of people of color and a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community have really latched onto these, and also because a lot of these characters have more embraced like these sides. There's a Marvel Pride book coming out. There's a DC Pride book coming out, and right now the X-Men books, they're super gay in great ways. Like it's fun. Right now they're doing their own version of the Met Gala with these extravagant costumes.
Ooh.
And so
Okay.
the X community is lighting up about it, and everybody is just so excited all the time. Everybody is just so hyped, and the comic book fandom is one of the most wholesome things I've ever experienced. And having made video game content for a lot of my life, I've seen firsthand how awful and toxic those communities can be. Having been in a lot of anime spaces, there's a lot of gatekeeping and toxicity, and
Unfortunately
there's
so.
really there's not a lot of that in the comic sphere, even though there's such reputation from people of like how they're presented in like stuff like Big Bang Theory and Simpsons.
Yeah.
I found it so inviting and welcoming.
That's dope. That's really dope because I think, yeah, maybe it's like that sort of fear of like, oh, if I don't have the knowledge, I'm going to be gatekeeped
No,
out of it.
everybody just wants to share what they know. That's the big thing. It's not so much like, oh, you don't know this one obscure thing from 1975. No, it's like, hey, here's this cool thing from 1975. Whoa, that's incredible. And then, yeah, it's so good.
Okay. That's what's up. I'm glad to hear that because I think, yeah, maybe it's like, also, it is like for me also like as a completionist type of guy too, with video games.
Don't even try. Don't even bother. You're gonna make yourself miserable.
There we go. Okay, you were freeing me from the shackles of like that because I think that has been like a stressor, like where I'm like, if I don't know all the main plot points, if I don't know this character, I remember like watching Justice League Unlimited, and I think I got fixated on that. Yeah, like I like Justice League the original like a lot. Mm-hmm. But then, like when they introduced like all these characters, I was just sort of like, I don't know who these people are. How am I going to figure this out? And I just sort of started getting lost. I think,
Yeah.
But now it's like now you're sort of setting me up to actually get into it. So I guess like it sort of like leads into like another question. Like what are your favorite adaptations? Like cartoons or movies or video games or like what has been your favorite?
That's a great question. So right now, Invincible does take the cake. Invincible is definitely the best comic book adaptation that I've ever experienced because it takes so much and it elevates so much. The character of Amber is significantly better in the show. Things like I mentioned earlier, like Machine Head and his auto-tune voice elevates it. Omni-Man being voiced by J.K. Simmons, I don't know why I never heard that in my head. But it's perfect. It does so much good stuff, and maybe I am mistaken on it because it's been a while since I've read the original Invincible issues because those are the worst part of the entire book. But the whole scene of the subway bit, I'm pretty sure that was original.
Wow.
Yeah, I could be wrong because it's been many years since I've read those issues.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's all good stuff, and the comic does a lot of great things that the show doesn't do. Mm-hmm. But still solid. The Batman Arkham games, I think, do a really good job of adapting the character. But honestly, the best comic book video game is Spider-Man for PS4. It captures the heart of the character so well. Let's see. The other issue is that a lot of the adaptations, they then change the source material to match. So, for example, Starlord is a completely different character now compared to how he was before. Like he was kind of like a hard ass and like kind of like grim and gruff.
Wow.
And then they kind of changed him before the movie happened. And then once the movie came out and it became a huge success, he literally like that costume was completely original for the movie.
Oh, wow.
And then a few issues later after the movie came out, he just finds that trench coat on the ground and he just starts wearing it now.
Wow.
And then he starts acting like Peter Quill from the movie. And so it's hard to tell like, well, yeah, it's an adaptation. It's better Starlord. I can't deny that this is a better version of the character now.
Wow.
And so the movies now match the tone of the comics really well. But who's adapting?
Comics, wow, that's crazy.
But, and also, that's not to say that like I mean, also, okay, Batman the Animated Series is also god tier in terms of adapting stuff. It was the gold standard before Invincible came and elevated it. But that brings a good point of there's so many things that the adaptations do create. Harley Quinn was a character that was created for Batman the Animated Series.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought she was there all along. Wow.
No. She was so popular in the show that they brought her in. And there's many characters and plot points that came from outside media that then gets incorporated back into the comics. And that's why I don't understand the whole competition aspect people have. Like, oh, this is better, this is better. They're all good and they all feed into each other. Like the character of Red X from Teen Titans is now finally being brought into the comics.
Oh.
And is now like they even like retconned it to where that was a part of Robin's life, or Nightwing's life back in the day. And that's a big plot point of the current Titans Academy, which is really cool. They're training the next generation of young heroes to really set them up for success. And then all these little kids found out about, Nightwing, Professor Nightwing's old, like, angsty vigilante days. And that's causing dissent within that. I love everything's influencing each other. And it's all that matters is good media.
That's dope. Okay. I mean, yeah. I'm glad to hear that. Like, and also that is more synergistic than I thought. Yeah. I thought also there might be like a sort of competition of like show or movie versus, comic book, and I really had no clue. Yeah.
Yeah, those people exist. But the thing is, anybody who's really getting so bent out of shape about that or getting so gatekeepy about that, we have a term for them. They're just called assholes. Yeah. But that doesn't represent the bulk of the community. We all are just happy for good things. And the MCU has been really solid. I think they've taken a lot of the goofier concepts and showed that, yeah, comics are dumb. Let's make that explicitly clear. They're so stupid. Yeah. There's a reason why my catchphrase on my channel is because comics.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Everything. Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense. It's all wild and goofy and out there, but it's fun.
Yes,
and that's the most important part. So I love the MCU has normalized so many things that we've just taken for granted in the comic community. The shows have been great. I think WandaVision has done such a great job of bringing in multiple plot points from various series throughout decades of continuity to form like one good cohesive thing. Falcon and Winter Soldier was phenomenal. I went and read all of the Mark Gruenwald era. He wrote Captain America for 10 years and made a lot of the most iconic stuff. And Falcon and Winter Soldier pulled a lot from that. So I read a lot of those books in preparation for the show to make content. And now having watched it, they honor a lot of that source material in such a great way. They adapted the character of John Walker a little bit differently, but still a phenomenal character. The fact that I hate that he's getting death threats.
Yeah, the actor himself.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that. But he's such a great actor that because he made this character very hateable. Right, that's the point. And the fact that we have characters like U.S. Agent John Walker coming in, and the fact that we have Groot and Rocket Raccoon, my mom knows about them and has merch.
Wow, parents, like, when parents get into it, oh man, that's when it's real mainstream, right?
Yeah, talking tree man that only says "I am Groot." That was the most obscure nonsense.
Took America by storm, right?
Yeah. No, It's all about just good content. That's what matters. No matter the medium.
That's what's up. I mean, like, yeah, you definitely like have like a sort of inspired a lot more hope into that, into the medium for me, because
I'm glad.
Yeah, I thought like, it was just like, okay, we're all fighting, like Viltrumites or something like that, right?
No.
Right. And just like, mine is better. Mine's, just.
No, man, we all just love good stuff together, and people can disagree, and that's fine. I think nerd culture needs to evolve and how they handle disagreements. I hate that's one of the reasons why I got out of the video game sphere. Like, I still play games on occasion, but like, I got so much hate on Twitter for just saying that I like a game.
Wow.
Just by saying I like Skyward Sword. And
how dare you?
I know.
Yeah. People will be like, that's the worst one. Right. But who cares, right? If that's the worst one, right?
If it is the worst one, whatever, I really like it as a game. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what matters. And I wish that more people were excited about, like, okay, maybe, like, and also hearing out why do you like this thing?
Yeah,
and that perspective, and that's
individual versus like the objective, list.
Because there's no such thing as objective, and that's why I love my job and I love ComicTube as a community, because I love deep video essays that break down the behind the scenes, like the creative of why this comic was made, why this worked, why this didn't work, and it creates kind of creates like a field of study. In a way, like, for a lot of my videos, because I do such deep dives into them, I'm basically doing like a little anthropology experiment every time.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the fact that you're able to do research on the writers and do research on like the time period of like when these came out. I mean, the fact that you tied together for me, like how comic books started, from these Jewish writers in preparation or like in defense, really, like for like the World War II era, right? That's pretty cool. That's not something I knew. And wow, like it's pretty cool. I wish more mediums were able to do that. Like were able to showcase why they were written in the time period they were, like
Mhm.
from the personal experience of the writer in a way too. Makes it more personal for me too. Like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, that's cool. I mean, I'm interested in trying to
Yeah,
understand that.
I think that there are a lot of different media like works that I think do capture a lot of that, but I think a big thing is that it comes more down to the familiarity with the audience of the creative team. So like people are able to pick apart Quentin Tarantino movies because like they have a catalog of work to go to see the similarities. Because he's like a famous director, they can learn more about him. Uh, I think that in comic books, writers and artists are honestly almost as important as the characters themselves. And we saw that a lot with like, even the creation of Image Comics, that these big shot creators knew that they were like you could sell a comic based on the creative team alone.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And seeing like how their work has evolved, and also a lot of them are so active on social media. The back of most single issues have Q&A. Like you can physically, before you would write in physical letters,
Mm.
and either the writer, the artist, the editor would answer them. Nowadays it's tweets and emails, but there's a culture behind talking to the creative team and asking, why did you do this, or have you considered this? So in Falcon and Winter Soldier, John Walker's best friend Lamar, he goes by Battlestar.
Okay.
That was not originally the case in the comics. Whenever John became Captain America, John Walker came on as Bucky, so they could have
Oh.
the duo. And
Uh-huh.
frequently, whenever you have a new Captain America stand-in, there's always a Bucky to go along with it. Even though Bucky is James Buchanan's name, it's also a title.
Okay. I had no clue.
But
That's
yeah,
cool.
but they changed Lamar's name from Bucky to Battlestar because the writer Mark Gruenwald didn't know that Buck is a racist term against black men.
Oh yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
and they only found out about that because of all of the fan mail. Like, hey, maybe you should know. And the dialogue between the audience and the creators is a huge part of a lot of these books. There's some books like Grant Morrison's Multiversity that actually is a very deep meta thing. Grant Morrison, the writer, they get a little too meta for me sometimes, but people love them to death. But that entire book is about the creative synergy between the creative team and the audience. The bad guy is literally called the Empty Hand, and it's the demanding populace demanding more.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, that's real meta.
it's. I mean, Grant Morrison trips on peyote and then writes comics. Like that's
Yeah, right.
straight up.
It's like,
That's a
yo.
fact.
That's pretty. I mean, hey, that's a process right there, right?
Yeah.
Man, like, okay, you have sold me. Like, I do feel like, you know what? Maybe I should dive into this whole world again, in another whole universe. Take me world. So, I
Everybody
guess.
needs that friend to get him in.
Yeah, honestly, that's the truth, right? Like, I'm glad that you're my friend who can tell me, like, okay, this is what to get into. So, I guess a good question now is like, what would be your like, and you probably answered this in like many of your videos already, but what would be
But I have it
good?
here.
Yeah, please, thank you. What would be good to get into? Like, what would you say, like right now, 2021? People should like look into if they're interested in getting into comics.
Well, I don't really want to recommend a lot of things that are fresh and coming out.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I miss so much about getting into comics for the first time is that when I first started, every book I read was the greatest book of all time because we have had decades worth of stuff. So every Batman book I read was the most iconic Batman stories ever written. And I do miss that because like I do like a lot of what's being written right now, but I haven't had the back to back bangers of everything I read just being pure gold, changing my
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing that anybody that wants to get into comics should do is find a character or a genre that they're interested in, and then start there. I'm going to give some personal
Yeah,
recommendations in
please.
this, but also don't be afraid to go online to like Reddit's or comic book websites. Just type in like reading recommendations and then whatever like for Batman, reading recommendations for westerns, and then a lot of people will have like little cells for each of them. So generally, when I'm getting people into comics, they usually want to hear about the big two, Marvel and DC. So for Batman, most popular superhero ever made, my number one recommendation is the book Hush. It features pretty much every iconic Batman villain gets a little bit of time to shine in it. And it tells this new story about this new bad guy who comes to town, Hush. What's the deal? What's going on here? Why does he seem to know so much about Bruce Wayne himself? That's a pretty solid mystery. And one of the things I like most about Batman is that he came from a book called Detective Comics. He is the world's greatest detective. He thrives best whenever he has a mystery to solve. Yes, he's also the angry punch boy, but I think his best stories have that mystery element. So Hush is one of my favorite starting points. The one that I started on, Batman: The Court of Owls, is another good starting point. That's the first of the current universe. Okay. So if you want to get caught up to now, just start there. For Spider-Man, I definitely recommend Superior Spider-Man. It's a weird place to start. I fully acknowledge that. But I like that a lot. That's Dr. Octopus and Peter Parker swapped bodies. And then while Peter died in Doc Ock's cancerous body, when Doc Ock was there, in Peter's brain, he got flashes of his life and learned the lesson of power and responsibility and decided to honor Peter's life by not only being a Spider-Man, but being a superior Spider-Man. And one thing I love about that is that he uses villain tropes as a hero. He has minions. He monologues. He's a bit more brutal. Has to learn how to pull back. Also, I recommend the beginning of Dan Slott's era. He's the guy who wrote Spider-Man for like 15 years straight. Wow. He started that after a soft reboot. There was one more day where he sold his marriage to the devil Mephisto and then basically reset everything. Brand New Day is the beginning of that. That's solid stuff. Also, there's the part right after Superior Spider-Man, whenever Peter gets his body back, because of course he did, because comics. Yeah, of course. That's another good starting point.
I was like, when does he get his body back? I was like, when do things get back to normal? But yeah, that's pretty cool.
Ultimate Spider-Man's another good place to start. That the Ultimate Universe was meant to start things from scratch without discarding the old continuity that people knew and loved, but with a fresh start, new universe, no baggage necessary. That's another great place. So that came out in 2000. Solid book there. If you want more like sci-fi stuff, I think the Guardians of the Galaxy are pretty good. I want to say 2013 is whenever they brought them back right before the movie. That's a good place. Doctor Strange, if you want to go for like more of the magical stuff. Teen Titans is like the quintessential team up book. So probably start with like I want to say 1985 era, which when they introduced characters like Raven, Cyborg, all at once there.
Okay.
Also good stuff. I want to say 2008 was when they had another new number one. That's whenever they brought in characters from Young Justice and they made like one new Teen Titans. Static comes over from the Milestone universe and into DC, so he becomes a part of the Teen Titans. That is a lot of fun to read. I also love Tim Drake as Robin leading that group. Solid guy. For indie books are probably where a lot of other people want to start. Also, I do not mean for this to sound sexist, but a lot of women do love indie comics a lot because it's more than just capes. And while you can tell other non-cape stories in Marvel and DC, things like, Doctor Strange, but, magic and occult and stuff like that, the indie market is where a lot more genres thrive. And that's also where you see a lot more female readers going in. Okay. Saga is probably the most popular indie comic right now. I don't know. I haven't looked at the charts recently, but it was dominating for a while. It's a really cool sci-fi epic with beautiful visuals. I'm a big fan of this book called Sex Criminals. It's a little not safe for work, but I will try to be polite with the verbiage. Basically, when two people reach completion, time freezes, and they use that to rob banks. Wow. to then pay back the loan on a bank on a library that's being foreclosed on with the money from the bank that's foreclosing on them. Fun stuff.
Okay.
Scott Pilgrim obviously is a lot of fun. The same writer, Brian O'Malley, does a new book called Snot Girl, which is about an influencer who is an unreliable narrator and has some seemingly cognitive disabilities where like you can't really tell what's reality and what isn't there. That's a really good book. The Archie comics reboot in 2013 is also actually really good if you want. If you want like a good high school story. The indie scene has a little bit for everything. Paper Girls is another good one. These like teenage paper girls doing their route in the 80s get teleported into this sci-fi epic.
Wow.
Yeah. The Runaways, another great one. That's another good teenage book of the children of all these supervillains are trying to come together. They run away from home when they find out their parents' identity and are trying to rough it on the road while also taking down their bad guy parents.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
so many great hits. Like I'm just like, oh man, okay, like lots of great choices on what to start on. But this is really neat. This is really cool.
I got 2 last indie recommendations.
Yes, please.
Radiant Black, which is Invincible meets Power Rangers. So it is a tokusatsu show. So like very Sentai-ish. Guy is down on his luck. He's heavy in debt, and then he stumbles across this black hole that gives him this really cool super suit. And what's that going to do with his life? Who knows? That's been a lot of fun. That just started. And another book that just started recently is called 7 Secrets. And it is very anime in all the right ways. It's incredible. There are these secrets that are in these briefcases that can change the world, and they're dangerous. Like they could be weapons. We don't know what's up. And there's a secret society that they're tasked with protecting them from people that would use them for evil. And there's this kid who gets trained up in this society to become one of the holder of these secrets. And it's been a blast. It's also just started.
Ooh, okay. Lots of great options. Okay, I'm glad. I'm super happy I asked you about this because I have seen some of these, like, you know, at least like when I go to conventions, like Paper Girl and Saga, and like I love how the logos look, and like how the covers look and all that. But I'm just like, okay, I don't know what's going on. But then, you know, one day I'll get into it. But now I'm a lot more motivated to get into it. And then I guess last question. Are you watching any anime right now?
Okay, so it's funny. I got out of anime for such a long time. I dated this girl that was all she did. She had like over 700 shows in her My Anime list, and anytime we interacted, it was anime. And so I had to back away. But now I'm back on it. Yes. Man, I am back on the anime train. Yes. So I watched Way of the House Husband recently. Fell in love with that. Food Wars, Beastars. I started JoJo.
Nice. Oh wow.
Yeah. Death Parade is a new favorite. I love that. Promised Neverland. God.
Read the manga for that one though.
Yeah. That's what I heard for season 2. I haven't started with that one yet. And right now, I'm watching a classic called Wolf's Rain.
Oh, yeah. Okay, very nice.
Yeah, and I'm about halfway through that. I'm actually really surprised. Yeah. I'd never heard anybody really talking about that, but it's my current girlfriend's favorite.
Nice. Well, I'm glad to hear that, man. Like, you got some good taste, and you're into some good series right now. And
Thank you.
Honestly, this was a wonderful podcast. Thank you so much. Where can people find you? I need to go watch a lot more of your videos because, I mean, this was only the beginning of everything. I love it. Where can people find you?
Oh, we're gonna make a comic fan out of you. So you can find me on YouTube as Comic Drake, either youtube.com/comicdrake or comicdrake.com. On every other social media, I am Trailer Drake. That's from my gaming days. So and maybe I'll bring that branding back. But Twitter is I post a lot about comic books, a lot about political activism and stuff like that. That's a good place to find me. And if you want to see my content specifically, youtube.com/comicdrake, and I sometimes stream on there and on Twitch at Trailer Drake.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. This was a wonderful episode. I'm super happy that you got to make some time and come on this episode because, I mean, I learned so much and I'm sold. I might be a comic book guy. Oh, boy.
I'm always happy to gush. Thank you for letting me talk your ear off.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much, and thank you to all the listeners. You guys are dope. As always, stay dope. Peace.